Okay. Sorry. Okay, one second. One second.
Awesome.
Sorry, guys. One of the dogs escaped, and I was afraid that she would start barking for someone at the door.
Yeah, I just had to close all my other windows there that I could possibly get a telephone call from and whatnot. So, let me just put that on silent. Hopefully that doesn't chime off and whatever, right? Things are pretty
Yeah.
busy these days. So,
Okay. Hmm. Mr. Joseph Nonato, thank you so much for joining us today.
it's great to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Problem. Now, as a religion teacher at De La Salle College in Oakland, in Toronto, how are you and your students managing during this time of quarantine period?
Well, it seems to me that the students are managing quite nicely. We spend a lot of time there, the teachers, trying to learn the new platforms of teaching online, and the students are adopting to it quite quickly. Remember that the online platform in electronics is a language that they speak more than we do at the older ages, so they've adopted to it quite quickly. Although, I mean, I think that so starting to miss each other, in the physical, I guess, proximity of having classmates and teachers and whatnot. So they've actually, the words have come out, and from what we hear, that they actually miss seeing the teachers, missing the classrooms, and miss being at the school. So,
Wow. So, as a teacher, how do you continue with the students' extracurricular and formational activities?
well, as you know, I'm a religion teacher, but one of my other duties at the school is also to be the commandant of the De La Salle Cadet Corps, and that's our extracurricular activity there, which is that program. The Cadet Corps is a leadership, youth leadership training program, and so what we have planned for the upcoming weeks, since we don't know when we're getting back, is to continue on with their training, at least in theory. So we can't do all the practical things like cadets do, like learning how to make rope bridges and tying knots and doing first aid and whatever. So we're going to have to teach them the theory online. So it'll be a bunch of lessons that we could use on the equivalent of Zoom or other, I guess, social media platforms, where you can teleconference or video conference one another. So keeping in touch with the kids is great that way. We had a meeting the other week there with all the other kids, and we're talking about how we're going to be striking the plan forward, and they were looking forward to it, right, and progressing. Again, I think that they're kind of craving that being together, the togetherness of being a team and being part of something, right? So it's a good
Who
thing.
would have thought, huh? Now,
Yeah.
as a as a religion teacher, it must be difficult to evangelize during this period of imposed virtual classroom. No, how are you doing it?
It is because you don't have the opportunity to do that personal one-on-one, right? You don't have, when you're sitting there at the beginning of class at De La Salle, we always say a prayer, and at the at the end of beginning and the end of classes, and every single day at De La Salle, they gather the entire school, and I think this is a very good LaSallian practice. We gather the entire school into the auditorium, all 600 plus of the students and all the staff and the teachers, and we get together for the morning assembly, which has the national anthem, and then a teacher leads us in a reflection. We're all together, right? So that whole idea of family, you can't really get that right now because obviously we're online. However, the school is pushing forward and keeping up that pace of the morning assembly, but just doing it virtually. So the principal this morning, our first one, started off with the sign of the cross there, and gave us a bit of a reflection from yesterday's gospel and talked to us and reflected about the cardinal's comments there in his homily, and passed it on to the students. But in terms of the formation, it's yeah, there is a bit to be lost there because we're not standing in front of the students and they can't see our facial expressions and our body language and they can't see certain things. However, I mean, it's kind of an unprecedented time that we're living in, right? Where 25% of the world is kind of shuttered indoors. We can be very grim about this whole thing, but we can shake our fists at the sky and saying, why has this been dealt to us? Or we can be very, very thankful. And I think that, there is an opportunity here. So the time of challenge that we have comes really with it, a silver lining. As a teacher, I know that I have the privilege in some cases to spend more time on a daily basis with the kids and some of the parents do, like from on day to day. So one parent commented to me that once a child goes to school, it's like we really don't have 12 years with them, right? From kindergarten, grade 1 all the way to grade 12 before they leave for university. It's more like we have 12 summers with our kids. And unless we actually carve out, maybe the 1 to 2 weeks there for that special summer vacation or whatever, then really the number of weeks that we can actually count with our children is very limited. But here we are in this very unique situation where the family is all together. And so here's a great opportunity for families to actually get together and play board games and get to know one another and make memories, make new memories. I know I have a really close friend that one of his things in the family is about making new memories during this time of being stuck indoors together, right? So going to about evangelization, here's a great opportunity for evangelization. Now, I've been a teacher, a religion teacher for about 2 decades now. We know that good lessons are actually sort of reflected at the dinner table when the parent asks the child, hey, so what did you learn today at school? So sometimes the child will say, what I learned in religion class is this, that, or the other thing. And so it's an opportunity through the child for a religion teacher to sort of like reach the family in that sort of evangelization. But you're passing the baton on to the child, and the child sort of brings it to the family. But with this whole thing of the online environment that we're in, it's like this is a really unique situation where we as teachers can actually go right into their living rooms, right, and be in their family rooms and be at the dinner table with the students. And oftentimes we know that some of the parents are actually in the background because sometimes they live in a small home, and while the child is on the computer doing his or her classes, the parent is just on the other table there, like doing whatever work from home as well. And so therefore, they get to hear what the lesson is that we're teaching. So it's a great opportunity for us to not only reach the kids, but also to reach the parents. And so therefore, there's an awesome opportunity for evangelization. But we also know that, the church is a community, right? We saw this right from the very beginning of when Christ sent out the 72 disciples, right? He sent them out 2 by 2. We know that God, when he created Adam, knew that it wasn't complete until he created Eve. So it's kind of like God's message to us, we were created to be together. And so, with all these families all separated into their homes, we're kind of clamoring towards that greater community. And as I said at the beginning of our discussion here, some of the kids are looking forward to having this thing over and then getting back to their friends, even though they're talking to them online or they're doing WhatsApp with them or whatever, texting each other, they're still missing that close proximity to one another. But we as a church are the same thing. And so here's an opportunity as well where, we've had more masses being recorded online or live streamed where you have priests and bishops and cardinals that are recording their homilies, and these homilies are getting streamed into the actual living rooms of all of the faithful. So what an awesome opportunity for a teacher to be able to say, hey, you know what? Don't forget to go to Holy Mass, and then copy the link and then paste it onto a lesson or put it into a bulletin board or whatever, a virtual bulletin board for them to take a look at. And so then, I've heard one comment where, from our brother, where he said that he was talking to one priest, and on one Sunday Mass, there was 57,000 like people that logged on, or 57, I guess, computers that logged on, which basically was much more than any kind of Sunday Mass that they would actually, be able to expect in terms of attendance. So the spirit of evangelization, the opportunity of evangelization is growing far and wide. And here, like oftentimes we say, when is the last time that a brother or a priest or a nun or, somebody spoke to you in your office while you were doing your work, unless of course you work at like a Salt and Light or something like this, to talk about Christ, But here we are, while they're doing their work, sitting on a computer, their child is listening to something like the homily for a mass or a religion lesson or whatever. And so therefore evangelization is being brought to our homes. So it's a great and exciting time. So
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah.
So one last question for you, Joseph. What gives you hope in these times?
Well, there's a comment from a famous American World War II general, or as we like to say it here in Canada, the Second World War, right? General Patton. And General Patton made this comment like, there are no atheists in foxholes. In other words, when things get real and people are dying, and there's a randomness to the realization of the finality of our lives, people tend to pay more attention to the last things, heaven, hell, purgatory, and judgment. And they say that, by the end of this pandemic, we will all know somebody who's either gotten sick or who's passed away from being a victim of COVID-19. I know, like in our own family, I had a cousin that who was working the front lines as a doctor who ended up contracting the disease and ended up dying just the other day. And so God rest his soul. But this is a story that is being replicated in all sorts of different families. So death is not far from all of us, right? And so there is a chance for us to sort of like look at it and say, you know what, and to reflect on the finality of our own lives and to see what we have to pay attention to what holds what is in store for us once we cross the threshold, right, from this life to the next, and when we face our Lord in the particular judgment, right? However, we know that God is good, and so Romans 8:28 tells us that we know that all things work together for the good for those who love God, and we also have confidence that God gives us this goodness, and He has a plan, and that there is a goodness that is in God that has a depth and breadth that far surpasses anything that we can perhaps understand. So maybe this time perhaps is giving us, like, in the end, Christ will be a part of people's lives. People will take out their Bibles and dust them off and pay attention to a bit of it more. Maybe all of these links that we're giving to them about the online masses, maybe they're actually going to go to mass a lot more. Maybe there's the students who are actually receiving some of these messages are going to go and reflect them back to their parents. And then perhaps the suffering of the sick will win salvation for the many of those who have not been together with Christ for a long time. And perhaps, on a human level, perhaps people will be forced to think of others more and to act in true charity, right? And then we will take less for granted what we actually have here, or what we're entrusted with here in the Western world, especially for those of us who are living comfortably right now. Now, perhaps families, as we were talking about earlier, are going to get a chance to reconnect. And since the family is the basis of society, which is it has an opportunity to get that re-inject, that maybe, we're looking at a horizon that's going to be far more optimistic than we were looking at, where everybody was kind of looking inwards and not really thinking outwards in terms of charity or their fellow neighbor or whatnot, right? So in the end, we have no idea what Christ has in mind for us. But if we pay attention to the stillness of our hearts, we can probably find the good. So there's a lot of hope here in the future.
That's great. Thank you so much, Joseph, for speaking with us today. And thanks for sharing your perspectives on these dark times. I wish you all the best.
All right. God bless you too. All right.
Okay.
Bye
Thanks. Bye-bye.